Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Gil-Kist Nation Sports Talk about the NBA. We are in playoff season now, and we are going to discuss the Eastern Conference, the place where it can be a little bit chilly, if you know what I mean. So, there's a lot of good stuff we're going to discuss about, mostly about these teams, where they're going to go, what they can do, what the potential is for these guys, what they do well and what they don't do so well. So let's just get started by discussing, of course, the greatest player we've ever seen. Yes, that is right, my friends, Giannis. The Greek god is ready to do some domination now. As a number one seed, had you asked me in the beginning of the season where would Milwaukee be, I would have even put them in the top 4. Somehow this team has completely transformed from being an average Joe team to a complete and total contender. Elite team, something to watch out for. They are going to be an exciting team to watch. Must watch TV, in my opinion. Now, of course, they're not the most exciting when it comes to offense or anything like that. You know, they're not a three-point shooting team all the time, but this team will be a beautiful team to watch, mostly because their main man, Giannis, he can make plays on all sides of the ball. Offense, defense, this guy does everything. So he's going to be fun to watch. This unit is also very interesting. They do have some depth, and a lot of those guys do step up here. Guard position, forward positions, it doesn't matter what you want to talk about with this team. They can do it all for the most part. Now, they are missing one of their best players, in my opinion, Mr. Brogdon, who would ideally return sometime, hopefully in the second round, if they're able to hang in there long enough. Ideally, this team, though, should be able to make it to the finals, so the second round shouldn't be too much. But if we're looking at it now, they should pretty much sweep through Detroit Pistons, go on to play Boston in the next round, and that's going to be a really interesting matchup. I don't know if they can get past Boston in the series, but I think they will hang tight. It would be a revenge factor for this team from last season. But you never know how Boston will be in the postseason nowadays. I expect Boston to be strong and be able to put up, I think, a little bit more of a bigger challenge than they did in the regular season for this Milwaukee crew. So I don't know if Milwaukee's going to be able to get by them. But if they do, which they can for sure, right? It's on the 50-50 side here. Milwaukee would ideally make it to the Eastern Conference Finals against either Philadelphia or Toronto, ideally. And I think against either of those teams, they have a pretty strong chance of advancing. So they could get by them and be able to make it to the finals. If they play the Warriors, though, I don't see them winning. If they play the Rockets, I don't see them winning either. They just can't really hold down against teams that just can score 3 points at will. And that's going to be something I don't know if they have the firepower to do. And that's something I want to see them do in this postseason. But ideally, all around stout team. They will be strong. It'll be interesting to see who and which team is really going to be able to give them the run for the money and bring them down. Lots of guys need to step up here on this Bucks team. From Mirotic to you name it, George Hill. Bring it on, man. Any guys you got on that roster. Mr. Middleton, you got to continue to perform like a stud that you are. Very interesting team. Now, of course, the opponent is going to be the most pathetic team here we have in the postseason. The Detroit Pistons, right? These guys, they got nothing on their roster, really, that makes you give any glimpse of hope. They are one and done. Now, for them to get anywhere past the Milwaukee Bucks, they would have to really step up with their defense, and that's not something I can really see them doing. But they're going to have to get a rebounding frenzy here, hopefully for getting some good contested shots here. And they can rebound, especially with their star center and, of course, Blake Griffin. Griffin's going to have to go off, but really the guard play here is going to have to really step up. And it's going to be very questionable to see who can really produce, good stat lines in the series from Detroit. But if they're able to somehow catch Milwaukee off guard, maybe get them a little jittery in that first game or two, and then be able to sneak away a win and gain momentum, they might be able to do something. But looking down the road against Boston, they would have no chance, in my opinion. And this team is really in a hopeless form when you think about it, because they just don't have enough depth, honestly, and they don't have enough talent. But kudos to you for making the postseason. This was a great start for you guys in terms of rebuilding your organization. Obviously having a little bit of a staple with Griffin on your team now. makes things exciting. So very good for you guys to make the postseason, and we hope to see the best out of you guys in this first round, which we all know will be very limited. But all right, ideally the next round they would have to play Boston, right? Or even Indiana. So Boston's going to be a very intriguing team here. I do expect a lot from Boston. I'm not going to write them off yet. Ideally, in my opinion, they are still the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. So if they do play well and play strong, this team honestly should be in the NBA Finals. So watch out for these guys for sure, right? If they start to click and start making good moves here and there, figuring out how to play their roster in this series, this team will be very dangerous. But of course, the more challenging it gets for them, this is going to be the main thing. Tight games, that is the big question with Boston. Tight games, can they finish and win the very close tight games? That's something they struggled with during the season, and that's something they're going to have to overcome in the postseason. And if they can do that, that's what's going to be the series clincher for them. So expect Boston, of course, to put up the points. They got a lot of good scorers here. They got obviously the most depth as far as talent goes, and we can expect them to do really well. They might be missing a couple players or two to start this first round, but ideally they'll get past Indiana flawlessly and should be a big contender and threat no matter who they play, and you can expect them to put up at least a 7-game series in every round. But of course, given their nature this season, they have been kind of floppy, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see them flop in a series and be outmanned or outdominated in a particular matchup. Now, their opponent, the Indiana Pacers, is probably a very intriguing team to talk about because, well, they have been without their star for the whole entire season, Mr. Oladipo, and they've really been relying on Bogdanovic. And Bogdanovic is going to have to continue his prowess of scoring, but most importantly, they need other players to step up. One of them, of course, could be Mr. Tyreke Evans, and along with everyone else on their roster. They do have a lot of depth here, a lot of depth, but they're just not producing enough, and not producing enough consistently and cohesively to be able to succeed, and that's kind of a problem. And going up against Boston, we know they're just not going to be able to match up well, so it's going to be pretty much of a slaughterhouse unless these guys really turn things around and start to click. Their identity has not been solved to this point, and they are still trying to figure it all out. Ideally, if they can step up here on the defensive end, that should help them out, but I just don't really see this team being able to do much. If they are able to slip out, though, against the Boston Celtics, it would be because they're able to continue their success from the three-point play with their guards and their forward positions. They're going to have to really lock it down, though, at the center position with Mr. Miles Turner, and perhaps use him as much as they can to succeed in the paint. It's not going to be an easy thing for them to do, given their type of style, but if they're able to maneuver in that direction, maybe they'll have a little bit more success. So, Indiana, it's not a very hopeful look for you guys to go throughout the postseason, especially with the caliber of these Eastern Conference teams. But we can still hope for the best to see that you guys are able to put up a show. Okay, we're moving on now. Of course, the next best team would be the Toronto Raptors. Another intriguing team, totally revitalized from last season. They are not the same team at all, right? So this is going to be interesting to see how Kawhi Leonard is able to thrive in the postseason, especially being on the Eastern Conference side, which is very strong, in my opinion, in terms of powerhouse teams. If he's able to go the distance, which Toronto Raptors are able to go the distance with great defense, pretty solid shooting team. They're really well-rounded. They're not going to blow you out all the time, but they're going to keep you down there, and they're going to keep the game close, but they're going to keep the scoring coming regardless. This team, though, I feel like has the potential to really do wonders series by series, especially with Kawhi Leonard, his experience, and seeing how he's going to be able to develop the team as the postseason goes on and be able to really just make them a little bit more finite with a little bit more fiber, you could say, on their squad so that every time they go into the next series against the next opponent, they're able to have a little bit more of an edge. So I really watch out for this team here to really actually put on a dominant showing in the Eastern Conference. If there's any team I think could put on a dominant show series by series, it is this team, because Kawhi Leonard has the experience, and of course we know how he can be in the postseason. Very dominant performer if we remember him on the Spurs, and every single time he would perform. But his last outing as a Spurs member, of course, in the postseason was a tragic injury in that game 1, which he was completely annihilating the Golden State Warriors. They were up by almost 20 points in the first half of game 1 before he fell. So watch out for this guy and this squad. I expect them to do great, especially defensively and offensively. They should be pretty solid too. They'll get past Orlando ideally. Moving onwards would be ideally against Philadelphia, and that'll be a very tough matchup, which we will have to discuss more about. But if they can sneak past them too, and then maybe Milwaukee, and you never know. Set your sights though on the finals for this team, right? Okay, the other team that's in the way, of course, has got to be Orlando Magic, and this team is a very magical team. Without question, without a doubt, Orlando Magic have been pretty spectacular as of late. In their last 20 games. They've been extremely successful, and I don't know if they can continue that success in the postseason against this Toronto team. It's just very unfortunate, the matchup, given the way Toronto plays defense. But this is a six-man unit Orlando has here that really finds a way to succeed, and I'm really intrigued to see how they perform and continue any type of success in this postseason. Putting up numbers from every single way, whether it's Terrence Ross or Vujicic, you name it, this team is able to find ways to put up points, and that's been a very intriguing thing to see from them. Now, they will have some other members that we have not seen lately, perhaps joining them, such as a Markelle Fultz or even a Mo Bamba. So reinforcements here will be aplenty for this unit, who has really been relying on a six-man roster for the last, 20 games or so. So watching these guys develop throughout the course of the series will be interesting. Ideally, we don't expect them to win more than 1 or 2 games, but there is potential. If they continue to play like the way they've been playing, they might be an upset alert team here. So watch out for these guys. If they are able to make it past the first round, ideally they play Philadelphia in the second round, and even then, I still would put on the lights for them to be another upset special. This team has the agenda of being able to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, will they? Honestly, I don't see it happening, them getting past the first round, but they do have great potential, and more likely they have more great potential for their future. Still an interesting team to see here. Like I said, they're mostly relying on the six-man rotation with a couple guys on their team that really put up the points. So watch out for these guys. Terrence Ross, Mr. Vujicic, some other two dudes too that can put up points as Fournier and Mr. Augustine. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do in overall. And I'm really intrigued to see how they perform. But we can't really expect too much. But there is a lot of hope and a lot of potential. All right, the next round of opponents they would have to play would probably be the Philadelphia 76ers. Once we know the Philadelphia 76ers are perhaps the one team designed to go to the finals. It is basically boom or bust with this team. You're going to have to make it to the NBA championship, or you're not going to make it to the NBA championship, right? So they went all in here. They tried to get as many players as they could to create a stout starting five, and that's exactly what they have. So they got to start clicking here, and they got to start dominating. So their first round opponent, though, it's going to be a little bit tricky for them, but I think they should be okay against these Brooklyn Nets. But my main thing is how they're going to perform if they get past the Brooklyn Nets, going up against the Toronto Raptors, which would be, in my opinion, the greatest series we will have in this playoffs, just in terms of intrigue of the characters and personalities of the teams, right? Philadelphia, though, going to rely a lot on these guard play, making sure they can continue to shoot their three ball. It doesn't matter who's shooting. Even Embiid can shoot the three. But we got to really see a lot of people step up here, especially Jimmy Butler. Butler, I feel like, has to be a difference maker come close games here. They got to have a guy who really steps up. Harris has not really shown us, a lot of stepping out parties here. He's really just been hanging in there, doing his thing from time to time. Maybe he'll have a good game or two, often. But, hasn't really shown any sort of dominance or really stepping up into the leadership position from game to game. So that's the thing I kind of question with this team, is who's going to really become their leader in the postseason, and when the time counts for these close matchups, who's going to step up and dominate? Ideally, this is a team that can make it to the finals. Like I said, it's boom or bust for these guys. They have to make it to the finals, or else they will have failed trying to make all these moves to make it to the finals. They can be dangerous. They could win it all very easily, and ideally they are built to win it all. Be very interesting to see how they perform, though, because we know they've kind of been here and there, a little bit wishy-washy. Still very strong, still very good, but just not at the peak performance we would like to see them. The last team we got to discuss, though, is your Brooklyn Nets. And Brooklyn has been a very intriguing team. So glad they made it to the postseason. For a little bit, I didn't think they would, given their difficult schedule. But like I said, they were able to show a little bit of finesse and hang in there. And now here they are. Very good. Congratulations to Brooklyn. Really excited to see how you guys do. Good matchup, too, against Philadelphia 76ers. We know Brooklyn doesn't have a lot of characters on their team that you can be like, oh, I know that guy, I know that guy. They really rely on Mr. D'Angelo Russell as their star guy, and he is their stud guy. So, this team, I don't ideally would expect them to get past, this Philadelphia 76ers team. Even if they did, if they slipped by them, they would have to go against Toronto, and it just doesn't really seem likely that this team can be able to do it, given their roster. But they are a strong team, a strong unit and overall, and I think they'll put up a fight in the series a little bit from time to time, but I wouldn't be too surprised if they were also, basically got wiped out really easily. Given the uncertainties and the inconsistencies of the Sixers, though, leaves a good opening for this Brooklyn team. And like I said, they went through a really tough stretch to finish the season, so if they are able to play strong and, just do their thing a little bit here and there, they should be fine. But the main thing with this team is they don't show any strength, as far as like any particular asset of the field. They're not a strong three-point shooting team. They're not like a strong rebounding team. So that's the thing. They're just kind of like a mediocre team. As we know, they are one of the lower 6, 7, 8 seeds. So those teams were really just kind of lucky to make the postseason. And that's kind of where they stand. And so we won't really get to see much from them in terms of competitiveness, but we'll get to learn a little bit about their nature here in their first round series. Well, that's kind of about it when you think about it. There's not much else we can really think about. We know who the top 4 teams here are in the Eastern Conference, and that's what we're going to watch out for. Should be an amazing Eastern Conference playoffs, in my opinion, and it will actually be more exciting than the Western Conference playoffs, in my opinion. Well, that's all we have to talk about today from Gil-Kist Nation to you guys. So enjoy the basketball playoffs.